So far, Superman has been a success story in revitalizing the DC universe in movies, at least in my opinion. And I am quite a big DC fan and comics in general, so, that opinion might come with a bit of bias there. But for today's video, I am gonna go through the current slate of DC movies and discuss which specific comic arcs or storylines they should adapt. Quite a simple premise, bit of fun. I don't necessarily believe each movie should be a one-to-one remake of the comic like Watchmen was. That's not what we're getting at here. Maybe they should only adapt a small part or elements of the story and most of it should stay original. I don't know, but for the sake of the video, we'll go with what the premise is. I just want to kick things off quickly here with Supergirl. I know we're going straight into it, you didn't expect that one, but this one is just an example really, because we already know the movie will be adapting the Woman of Tomorrow miniseries, and I actually recently read this one after a long time of it sitting on my backlog, and it was great. Yeah, it was very good. It deals with some heavy themes and scenarios which I'm not sure I can talk about on YouTube. I don't know how they're going to adapt those in the movie. I don't know if they will. I hope they do. It really adds to the story, it adds to Kara's character, so we'll see. But it is by far the best way and the best comic to adapt for a Supergirl movie, in my opinion. When you take into account that Krypto has already been introduced in Superman, and we know it's Kara's dog, Krypto has a big role in the comics. Well, relatively big role in the concept of Woman of Tomorrow, I will say. So it is good that's already established. I do personally think this is just an excellent way to grow Kara's character in the DCU, and I think it could be the next best female superhero movie out there. There's not many of them, there should be way more, and hopefully we get more with this, but yeah, I think this is the best route for them to take. Now, the next movie scheduled for release is a little bit of a rogue one, and that might be a bit of a pun there, I'm not sure, but this movie is Clayface, and it's really hard to pick a singular arc or storyline for Clayface. I'll be really honest, I'm all for more of a original take on the character. I kind of want to see what the writers cook up here. A lot of the more prominent Clayface story arcs focus on his redemption, such as the Rebirth Detective Comics run, and while great, just isn't what this movie should be. This movie should really focus on his decline, and maybe the best option for that is the One Bad Day anthology issue that features Clayface. It focuses a lot more on the human aspect while incorporating the body horror that the movie promises to showcase, so I can see that as being a really good option. Regardless of the choice of what to adapt or what not to adapt, this is one of the most interesting comic book movies slated for release in any universe, if I'm being honest, and I can't wait to see what they do. I'm not sure if this next movie is even still releasing at this point, but The Authority supposedly exists, and if I'm being honest, I have never read a single issue of The Authority in my life. So I'll keep this brief and simply state that the movie should really adapt a run that really showcases the origins of the group. I think this is one of the only movies on the slate that needs to be an origin story of some sorts, because the vast majority will know nothing about the Authority. Many people apparently recommend starting with both Warren Ellis or Mark Millar's runs with the team if you're reading the series, so I would probably say taking elements of those and creating a movie around that is probably the best choice in this regard. Now onto one of the biggest movies that will be coming out in the DCU so far, and that is The Brave and the Bold, which will be Batman's introduction to the DCU barring any changes from James Gunn in regards to something like Robert Pattinson coming in. We don't know at this point. The story will apparently focus on the relationship between Batman and Damian Wayne's Robin, so we're skipping a whole lot of Batman sidekicks here. The story should feature the early days of Damian as Robin, therefore the best choice should be Grant Morrison's Batman and Son. I think it's the perfect way to introduce both characters to the universe, along with a range of villains such as Man-Bat or even the Joker if they want to go that far. However, if I were to ignore any mention of Damian at all, I'd love for a proper adaptation of The Long Halloween, not the animated version, just like, you know, a proper live action Long Halloween within this universe, you know, within the confines of that. Or, hear me out, I'd prefer them to kick off with Dick Grayson as Robin instead, because we haven't properly got that, and I want that. So, it is what it is, and I'll take what I can get. Now, I'm not going to linger on this next one for very long. Swamp Thing, the best run to do is Alan Moore's Saga of Swamp Thing run. We've already seen it adapted before technically, in the vastly underrated Swamp Thing show, which I still recommend, but since nobody apparently watched it except me, let's just bring that back to wider audiences. Why not? Wonder Woman is a bit of a hard series to decide on. We've had two recent movies, one pretty good, one pretty not good, and I think we should focus on a more modern day take of Wonder Woman, rather than the Captain America approach of starting in the past. However, I'm also not entirely against it being a sort of origin story, if we're going to have an origin story for anyone on here. And I don't mean the same way they did with the recent movies. I mean more of her emergence into the modern world. We didn't really get that. We got it, you know, her coming out during World War II, like, you know, all of that sort of stuff, but not really into the modern DCU. Not entirely sure of James Gunn's ultimate plan regarding the Amazons, other than a TV series called Paradise Lost being developed. They could also adapt the Paradise Island Lost comic arc, which does see a civil war brew in Themyscira, which could also potentially lead to Wonder Woman's emergence into the modern world. I don't know. TV show will probably already adapt that. I think that's probably the best approach if we're going to pick one of the Trinity to kind of be, I don't know, introduced to the world in an origin type way. Because I don't want to see Superman origin again. I don't want to see Batman origin again. I don't mind seeing a Wonder Woman origin again. There's a bit of a difference there. Probably a good option and a fun way to reintroduce comics' greatest female hero. Now, we've just got 3 more movies to discuss that are apparently on their way. I don't know if more have been announced. I know of 3 more. Although 2 of these movies I have no real answer for. So, Sergeant Rock is a relatively low-ranking comic character on the scale, and my experience with him is very minimal. So, it could really do anything with this movie, and I'd pretty much accept it. Whereas the rumoured Bane and Deathstroke movie, I'm fully willing to let them cook on this one. I have no idea what they could possibly adapt for this. So yeah, I'm happy for them to do that as well for that one. However, we do have a Teen Titans movie in the works, and I'm not really sure which era of the Titans we're adapting. But I'll be very honest, I'm not all that interested if we don't have Dick Grayson involved. So in the hopes that that is the case, the best arc to adapt, in my opinion, is the Judas Contract. Probably their most famous arc. I know it can be overdone in comics and everything, but it is a great way to introduce Deathstroke, a good story as well, and, you know, if you're going to make a Deathstroke and Bane movie, why not kick it off with Titans? That's all I'm saying. And again, another movie I'm excited to see what the writers do with, what they cook up, but, you know, I'll temper my expectations until we actually have some form of confirmation of what we're getting. So, which DC movie are you most excited to see come to life? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe while you're down there, of course, and I'll see you next time.